Okay, everybody. The waiting room has slowed down just a bit. There's still a few trickling in, but I figured we will get started. We are recording this presentation, so if there is something that you miss, we will be posting a link to the recording so you can share it with your colleagues, etc. I just want to take this moment to welcome you all. Thank you all so very much for attending on this Thursday. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Duda. I am the grants coordinator at Parks and Trails New York. And today's presentation will focus on the expansion of the Park and Trail Partnership Grants Program. Not only the financial side, but also the implementation and build out of some of the important themes that we encourage you to incorporate into your projects this round. The purpose of this workshop, which is being held a full month prior to the application process even opens, is essentially to get you all thinking, planning, and discussing with your colleagues in advance. We also hope that it will serve the purpose of perhaps inspiring you to come up with some project ideas or to enhance already existing plans for a potential project. It will also provide you some ample time to connect with your park or site manager and possibly your regional director to help ensure that alignment between your potential application and the agency's plans for the location that you champion. This is intended to be more of a project conceptualizing workshop. Therefore, we will not really be going much into many of the specifics about the grant application process, eligibility, things of that sort. Information on those aspects of the grant will be provided in webinars after the grant process opens in mid-September. So we'll review those dates with you at the end of this presentation. All right, so just a quick agenda so that you know what to expect. We anticipate this being about a close to 40-minute presentation with, like I said earlier, we will have a question and answer session at the end of it. We'll be providing a quick background about the grant program. We'll describe how we're framing this round of the grant program within the upcoming New York State Parks Centennial celebration. I will also talk about the increases to the maximum funds per category. And we'll take a look also at our added special focus areas. Some of these areas include accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, as we'll be referring to it throughout, as well as the partnerships that you can develop or enhance. We'll go through some examples of projects that could include, or past projects that have included these themes. And then, yeah, we'll talk about some next steps from here, and then go over the key dates and the timeline for the upcoming round. Just a little housekeeping, as I'd mentioned, to foster an enjoyable experience for you all, please remain muted and add any and all questions to the chat, which you can access at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to address them during the Q&A session. If we do not touch on them during the presentation, a recording is going to be available to you of this workshop. So yeah, we encourage you all to connect with us. If you don't see that link coming through your email, connect with us and we'll provide it. Okay, so who are we? As I mentioned, yeah, I'm Jonathan Duda, the grants coordinator. If you're going to be applying, you'll get to know me really well. I'll be happy to answer all your questions throughout the process. We also have Will Cote. He is our Parks Program Director, as well as Shayna Hogan, who is our Parks Program Coordinator. So I'll start out with essentially just going over how and why this expansion came to be. Beginning back in 2015, the Park and Trail Partnerships grants were just a $500,000 program that really did prove to be extremely competitive. We received a wealth of strong applications, but had to deny many of them each round due to the limited funding that we had. So as word continued to spread about the grant funding, it became clear that more funding was needed. Thus, up to round 6, once round 6 came along, we did wind up offering the first $1 million worth of awards. At this time, groups that were affiliated with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation became eligible for the program. Still, with that doubling to the million and the addition of all these wonderful groups, we were still inundated with requests from groups across the state. And there continued to be a lack of funding for all the projects that were being proposed and that we wanted to award. So when Governor Hochul took office, we became aware that there may be a political appetite to expand the Environmental Protection Fund, or the EPF, from which actually funds this grant program. So at the end of 2021, Parks and Trails New York met with the governor's office and key legislators to make our pitch for additional funding, which we positioned as vital for the growth and success of our public lands, especially given their continued record visitation during the pandemic. We focused on expanding the total funding for current categories, prioritizing grassroots partnerships at the community level, and advancing DEI initiatives, both in terms of programming, but also for friends groups as independent organizations. So to help push our agenda, friends groups from across the state gathered together virtually back in March for our Park Advocacy Day, which gave us the opportunity to share the success of this grant program, how the program funds critical work being done by Friends Group that is beyond the ability of the agency, and the opportunities that would be created with more funding. So our ask and subsequent solution: double the 1 million in 2022 to address this growing list. In the spring of 2022, we were very happy to see that our proposed increase of $2 million was included in the EPF budget. And now here we are bringing this opportunity to all of you. And it's coming at the perfect time to help friends groups meet the needs of our public lands and be leveraged into the upcoming centennial celebration. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Will Cote, who he's very well versed in the upcoming centennial celebration, and yeah, he'll share how this will connect to that event.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. So many of you might be a little bit familiar with the centennial celebration, but in 2024, New York State Parks is going to be hosting a statewide year-long celebration to acknowledge the 100-year anniversary of the legislation that officially formed the park system. So while it's a celebration of the iconic park system as it exists today, it's also an opportunity to look to the future. What will the next 100 years of our parks, historic sites, and public lands look like? And what can we do to ensure it's an asset for all New Yorkers? The leadership at state parks are clearly still working on the details of what the centennial celebration will include, but we are aware of a few of the primary tenets. First, create new partnerships that translate into events and programs that will bring more people into our park system, both new users and returning visitors. Also, strengthen our current partnerships to help the agency enhance the system and advance it into the next century, including new programs and capital campaigns. And also to ensure that all our parks and sites are welcoming and safe for all users by reducing barriers to access. And so the Park and Trail Partnership Grant is truly a great way for you all, the friends groups of New York State Parks and Public Lands, key partners in communities across the state, to fund projects, events, programs, and campaigns that lend themselves to the centennial celebration. Since funding for this upcoming round will be disseminated in early summer 2023, it's perfect timing to lift your vision for the centennial and have it feed into those broader celebrations that will be happening throughout the duration of 2024 when your projects are coming to completion. So with that background in mind, we would like to dive in a little bit into the specifics on how we are changing the grant program and the various lenses or focus areas that we will be applying to applications going forward. First, we are going to be addressing costs. We know that costs associated with the work of friends groups has increased over the last few years in particular. So to offset increased contract estimates from vendors or costs associated with staffing and programming, we've increased the maximum or ask in which an organization can apply for each category. Our stewardship and public access category has increased from $75,000 to $150,000. These are the more hands-on or quote unquote shovel in the ground type projects, such as trail or building restoration, sign, kiosk, or interpretive display installations or repurposing, programming, and events. Our capacity and organizational assessment category has increased from $50,000 to $100,000. These are projects that are more internal, that can strengthen the capacity and expertise of your organization, helping to fulfill your mission and to improve reach, effectiveness, and impact. Our step up category has also increased from $10,000 to $20,000. These smaller grants assist with the administrative and legal fees needed to secure 501c3 status, along with the costs associated with completing a consultant facilitated organizational assessment and the plans that are a result of said consultation. And lastly, our 2-year professional development category has increased from $100,000 to $150,000. These are to support the hiring of permanent staff in order to advance an organization to a higher and more sustainable level of professionalism and fiscal and administrative stability. They can be used towards the creation of a first-time staff hire or additional staff, either full or part-time, increasing a current position from part-time to full-time, or sharing a position with another organization. We do want you to note, though, that this $150,000 is for both years combined, not an annual disbursement. So thus consider the amount of $75,000 when configuring your project budget for annual salary and benefits. So let's also look at how this 8th round is going to be different. We do have some special focus areas we want to draw your attention to with the upcoming round, which launches in September. Our review team will be giving extra consideration to applications that can move the needle forward, as they say, on the following 3 areas that are a priority for Parks and Trails New York and our partners. Your group may still put forward an application that does not focus on these programmatic targets. It's simply our way of leveraging the additional EPF funds for this program into areas that we know need to be addressed in a meaningful way by grassroots organizations that are affiliated with OPRHP or state parks and the DEC. First, let's talk about accessibility. Expanding access for all New Yorkers to our state parks and public lands and ensuring that they feel comfortable and welcome will be a cornerstone of this centennial celebration and, moreover, a primary objective of the agencies going forward. These ideals are supported by the forthcoming Open Spaces for All report, which has been co-authored by our partners at the Open Space Institute and outlines a number of key recommendations for state parks, DEC, and their partners for enhancing accessibility to our public lands. Whether it be race, religion, age, or gender, language, sexual orientation, ability, or a combination thereof, we are looking for proposals that, first, engage or amplify the voices of diverse communities, and second, reduce barriers to access and enjoyment of our state public lands by all communities. Barriers could be due to location, a lack of access or amenities, insufficient public awareness, inadequate programming or event offerings, or a number of other issues. So a few ways this important need can be addressed is through innovative outreach, inventive event planning, creative promotional strategies, or other programmatic initiatives. One of our other focus areas is diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. So ensuring that our parks and sites are welcoming and safe for all users is critical for the future of our parks, public lands, and grassroots nonprofits in general. Addressing DEI is an integral part of the future of both state parks and DEC. It's also intrinsic to friends groups achieving their mission statements, and more importantly, perhaps, engaging new members, volunteers, and future leaders. We understand that addressing DEI in all of its various forms and outcomes takes a lot of time, but starting at the ground level, looking internally, is a really important and critical first step. So to that end, strategic visioning or 5-year planning, board recruitment strategies that focus on connecting with folks that represent the whole of your local park or site community, or visitors that see and use your site, are just examples of a couple of things that we're hoping to see from applicants. You could also consider professional consultation services that help your group better understand and distill a plan for incorporating DEI into all aspects of your work. These types of activities are not only essential for professionalizing and adopting best practices for friends groups, but create better alignment with our state agency partners as well as state and federal laws. And lastly, let's look at partnerships. Another way to address DEI and accessibility is through the development of new community-level partnerships that will engage and welcome visitors who may not have traditionally thought that your park, site, or land is a place for them to connect with. We recognize that this may mean moving beyond traditional programming like environmental education to initiatives and special events that focus more on things like, say, music, art, history, alternative transportation, multicultural education, or other areas that you see as needing to be addressed or are informed by your local community. In our conversations with organizations who have been able to successfully expand their reach to new audiences, we found that one of the most effective ways is through partnership. There's a trove of organizations, big and small, in every corner of New York State who are hungry for opportunities, yet simply do not have the resources to implement them. Parks and Trails partnership funds can be used to establish and nurture these relationships, whether it be to work on a specific project or collaborating on a new event or a series of programs that address accessibility at our state parks and public lands. As you have all likely experienced, many of our parks and historic sites tend to attract certain populations over others. A proven method of addressing this disparity is through engaging new audiences and developing those new events and initiatives and leveraging additional capacity through collaboration. Essentially, it takes a village, and hopefully this will provide an opportunity to begin banding together to that end. One point that we'd like to stress, to be clear, friends groups that apply will need to include a letter of support or a letter of commitment from the organization that you are proposing to partner with collaboratively. But the funding that we ultimately disperse will be directed to the friends group only, since you will be the primary applicant and you are the organization affiliated with state parks or DEC. Just want to put a fine point on that to make that clear. But with that, I will pass over to Shayna to give you a few ideas of some projects that you could consider.
Thank you, Will. And you touched on a few that I'm going to go over, but I just want to highlight, and there are some new ones in here. But thank you for sharing those special focus areas as context. So to get those wheels turning a little bit more, I know you all have your own ideas, but here's a few in case you don't. We have a few ideas to get you thinking about how to incorporate these themes into your proposals. So I will also share some real life examples of past awarded projects that would fit under these categories as well, that have moved the needle forward on these three focus areas. So one way to think about these initiatives is to think internally, as Will mentioned, about your group. So that is those DEI trainings or consultant services, board recruitment campaigns that can really reflect your park or site's community and visitors. That could be developing a marketing plan to expand your organization's voice, populations beyond who you are already reaching. That could mean for your next events, programs, for your next project, shovel in the ground project, that you contract with minority and women-owned businesses. That is one way to move the needle forward on that, is to find you're already going to do this project, you see what other vendors are out there. That is an option. Or another way to think about it is enhancing a visitor's experience. So away from the internal capacity building towards more projects that would enhance visitors' experience. So you could build infrastructure to better accommodate visitors with mobility challenges. You could design and install interpretive displays or panels that engage wider audiences, incorporate multiple languages, or provide aids for the visually or hearing impaired, or even telling your story in a different way through interpretive programming. Maybe your site has always told the story from one perspective, maybe incorporating voices from telling the same story from a different perspective. This could be one way to tell these stories from a different viewpoint and include voices of historically marginalized populations. The last one we have here is developing partnerships that Will just mentioned with DEI-focused nonprofits in your community to create events and programs that will welcome more users to your site and expand accessibility in a broad sense. So with those in mind, here are some of the projects that we have funded in the past. It looks like a lot on the screen. We will be sending documents as a follow-up email with these examples. So don't feel you need to frantically write these down, but I just want to go over a couple. So John Brown Lives. This state historic site of the abolitionist has been awarded multiple grants for a wide range of exhibits, programs, and events focusing on American slavery and social justice, and to develop a strategic plan to more effectively execute their mission and vision. The Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct hired a bilingual outreach coordinator to promote an underutilized section of one of New York's linear state parks to its Spanish-speaking surrounding communities in Yonkers. The Friends of Ganondagan State Historic Site has played an integral part of teaching and preserving Seneca and Iroquois culture. They've received a few awards for their site in central New York, including the restoration of a replica Seneca longhouse and their Iroquois white corn project that is reintroducing this healthy indigenous food back into the Native community and the community at large, both in traditional and contemporary ways. The Friends of Mexico Point, who I see Diane on the phone here. Hi, Diane. And as well as the Rochester Inclusive Community Rowing. They created ADA compliant pathways with the latter, in Rochester Inclusive Community Rowing, sorry. They created ADA compliant pathways engaging with veterans and those with wheelchairs. And then the Friends of Moreau Lake State Park are building a sturdy level trail for the disabled and neurodivergent that's fully compliant with the ADA and Architectural Barriers Act, including kiosk placards containing Braille and interpretive signage placed at lower levels for those in wheelchairs. Those are just a few. I hope these examples and ideas are resonating with you and your group's mission and goals, or providing inspiration if you haven't thought about this before, rather than seeming intimidating. So in our conversation with friends, we have been hearing there's a desire to take on some of these projects, and we want you to know that you don't have to go at it alone. And that is where these partnerships come in. So as Will mentioned earlier, in our conversations with organizations who have been able to successfully expand their reach to new audiences, we found that one of the most effective way to do this is through partnerships. So PTNY has been working hard over the past couple of months to reach out to numerous organizations across the state whose mission focus on accessibility and diversity. And we want to learn more about what their needs are and how a potential partnership with friends organizations can help them further their missions. We've connected with statewide and regional organizations already, such as the Association for Aging, the Independent Living Association, Ladders to the Outdoors in Western New York, who are also expanding to different regions across the state. Very exciting opportunities there, as well as the DEC's Office of Cultural and Native Affairs, among others. We're getting busy trying to make these connections so we can help you guys make these connections as well. So we will be supplying with you, as I mentioned, a one-pager after this workshop with additional partners, resources to consider. We will also be discussing this in more detail at our upcoming regional conferences for friends groups of New York State parks and historic sites specifically this fall. So if you're joining us there, you will be hearing more about that there as well. So that was a lot of information. So where do we go from here? Next steps, find out if you're eligible. That we have eligibility on our website if you haven't applied before, and we shared that in a previous workshop as well. So we have those recordings, we can send that out, or you can email us with any questions if you're not sure if you are eligible. Next step would be to speak with your site manager and or regional director as soon as possible about a potential project before the application process opens. Be sure all parties are on board with your proposed project and that there's alignment in your plans and the plans established by agency leadership. So this is important because a letter of support from the agency is a required component of the grant application. So next step also, if you do have any partnerships in mind, if any of that resonated with you, start reaching out now. Building these relationships takes time. It's better to do it sooner than later. It's going to be harder to get that in. So some dates coming up for you to mark on your calendar. The application process for this round opens September 15th and will close on December 9th. So We do have 3 more webinars coming up. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, I believe we have the webinar for applicants that are applying for a professional development grant. That will be on September 25th. Webinars for all other prospective applicants will be on October 12th and potentially November 10th. We might have a conflict there, so we'll let you know if that one changes. But right now, October 12th and November 10th are those 2 webinars. And then we are expecting awards to be announced in the early spring of 2023 and first rounds of funds distributed in early summer of 2023. And with that, I'm sure there are some questions going around, so we'll take a look at the chat here, and maybe we'll just stop sharing so I can see all of your lovely faces. Let's see what we have going on. Okay. Let's see, we have a question from Vicky Dymock. With partnerships, can work be done for the programming at the partner's site? John,
Yeah, that's a good question, Diane. And remember, these grants are these are state funded grants for friends groups of state parks, historic sites, public lands. And so the projects must be done on site of the, of the location where the friends group operates. Especially even if it is, and it's definitely something physical, but even if it was an event of some sort, because it's not, on the actual grounds of the state land, we would have to remain on there.
Great, thanks, John. I see a question in here from Julia. Can the partner be a municipality like a city?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Let me preface, of course, the answers that be giving. This is, a new step for us. So with these answers, what I'm going to be doing is sending you all these questions with the answers afterwards, because some of them may want to check just to be sure if if there are any gray areas, for example. But yeah, for partnerships, you can of course be working, even past projects. Groups have had to work with other organizations in their community that weren't necessarily nonprofit organizations. You would be getting the funding, though. The municipality would not be getting any of the funding. You being the friends group, of course.
Okay. So I see a question from Eric. Will a friends group be allowed to pass grant funds to a partner organization in return for the partner's time spent on the project?
Yeah, that's one that's really should be, I do want to discuss that more with our team, because essentially, I mean, a partner could be a contractor, for example. So that is kind of a gray area that I would gladly get back to you, Eric, and for everybody in attendance to put a more clear answer to that, because yeah, that can be kind of like I said, a few gray areas depending on the involvement of the partner and just how much hands-on they'll be doing with the project with you.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Linda, will friends groups commitments be 10%? I believe that's referring to the match. Correct, Linda? Speak up if I am not correct in that, but I'm guessing that's in reference to the match.
Yeah, if you are referring to the match, yes, it is still 10% for the stewardship and the capacity grant categories. That's 10%, but half of that can be in kind. So only half of that match has to be in cash. And the exceptions are the professional development, which is the 2-year category. That is much larger of a commitment of a project. So that requires a 20% match. And yeah, the details are all on the website there. The lowest one, of course, the step up grant, that's just a $500 match still. But for the main two, yes, it's still a 10% match.
Great. I see a question in here from Megan that there's no separate category funding for these areas. That is correct. These are special focus areas that we are considering, but there is no separate category to apply for these. I don't know, Will or John, if you want to elaborate on that at all. But.
Yeah, essentially what can kind of go back through the recording there, how Will had put it is that, you know, just we had recognized the need for these categories, due to lack of a better term, for these additions, should I say, these enhancements to the grant program. And with this extra funding, we're able to really now focus on that. And, you know, as he had mentioned, yes, we highly encourage projects to incorporate these, but it's understandable. Sometimes a project can be very difficult to be able to, you know, reach out and incorporate them. So the past categories that we've had, the past projects, still, you know, still just the same. These are essentially more areas that we're able to focus on and would like to see incorporated.
Yeah, I'll just also add to that, and the document that Shana created that she'll be sending out to all of you about previous projects and potential partners. There's a small section at the bottom that sort of goes into some more creative territory on partners or organizations or entities even that you may want to consider reaching out to. But we completely understand that a priority for your friends group may be replacing a roof on a building, or painting, or doing some of those things that just need to be done. And so, you know, it can be challenging to incorporate DEI or accessibility or and those types of things in it. So we don't want to discourage folks from doing that. I think what we're trying to do is encourage you. Is there a way to consider getting quotes from a minority or women-owned business enterprise? Are there other ways that you can consider looking at it in sort of a new way? So that's why we want to provide this presentation early, so there's plenty of time to think about those things and connect with your members and the rest of your group and your community. And I will stress for the 1000th time, and I hope folks take us up on it, but reach out to us. John, Shane, and I are happy to talk with any one of you individually about your idea, how it might work. Would it lend itself to these things? It's just, we just want to put this framework forward to you so you kind of get a sense of what we're thinking. If that makes sense.
Thank you, Will, for that clarification too. I'm seeing one last question in the chat, unless anyone else has any follow-up questions from John Denetso about the timing of the funds.
Yeah,
we have talked about this before, but I'll leave that to you, John.
Sure. Yeah, I just read through it, Shana, and yeah, John, that has been, especially this past round, that has been a major source of anxiety for a lot of the recipients of the awards. The funds were tied up for a good few months, just well beyond our control, and you know, the state agency, they're well aware of it. They're well aware of our concerns and the delays. And so what we're going to be doing is actually meeting with our contacts at New York State Parks and going to go through just, you know, what exactly the process is. We are, admittedly, we're also essentially at the mercy too of the New York State budget. You know, we don't know these funds are available. For example, that $2 million that was put into the EPF, said, yes, it's in there, but will it get approved? And we usually don't know until, and Will and Shana, you know, the date's better, like what, mid-spring or so is when the public announcement. So, you know, we're kind of at the mercy at that, but then also, all right, once that's settled, that's what we want to settle, really nail down with our, you know, our partner of New York State Parks, is how quickly can we get the check in the mail, to us. So because once we receive the funds, Parks and Trails New York, boom, it's a pretty quick process on our part. So with that said, I have had some conversations with a few of you about the holdups of your projects, and if any of you in attendance do have been, whether it's with a contractor or something along the lines of that, that's really has been quite a source of stress for you over the summer and disappointment. Send me just a quick little blurb email, a little personal anecdote of some sort, just a few things that we can share with them when we do meet with them, and just some of these examples will just kind of go to show what's kind of the effect that it can have, especially if it's a construction project that needed to be started in June. So
I will also add on to that, just John and I have done everything within our power to try to find out what's going on and where the holdup is. And I will say that our primary liaison at State Parks, who works with us on this, is acutely aware. Having your words shared with John that he can pass along is absolutely helpful, but there is certainly a desire for them to help straighten this out and expedite this, and understanding the construction season in New York State can be very short, and that this is what we've been putting forward. The timing of this is what we've been putting forward in all these grant rounds for many years, and we'd like to maintain that commitment. So I'll just throw that out there, that State Parks is open to making it work and getting it rectified.
Great, thank you. Let's see, one last question in there from Meg. If funding is received summer 2023, when does it need to be spent by?
Yeah, so these grants are 1-year grants, and they are 1 year starting from when essentially your check is received, from when we send the check out. So we give you till if you receive if the check is renowned July 3rd, 2023, by July 31st, 2024 is when your final report needs to be submitted.
So Shana, I know there aren't any other questions. I just want to chime in with 2 other thoughts for the good of the order, if you will. I know I've been doing a lot of talking, but just want to throw an additional 2 cents in, and also give folks time to ask any other questions that they may have. But first and foremost, Shana, hopefully you've been receiving information from Shana and I about the regional conferences for Friends coming up in September and November. I strongly encourage you all to attend that. It is free. It's also, you're more than welcome to invite as many members of your friends group as you would like. The reason I want to stress this is because there's going to be a session from Sally Drake at the Natural Heritage Trust about the Centennial Celebration, what it means for partners and friends groups. There's going to be a session from the Open Space Institute about the Open Spaces for All report, its findings, its recommendations, as well as a presentation from staff working at State Parks in Albany in their DEIA division. So that's going to really be a primer of what, DEI in that sense may mean for friends, groups, and partners, and it'll very likely provide a structure and a template for things that you all might want to consider moving forward. Depending on when you attend, it might be a little bit late for this application round, but it hopefully will get sort of the creative juices flowing for future applications as well. So I think that will be really important information for everyone to hear. Thank you, Shana, for dropping the registration into the chat if folks are interested. One other thing I'd like to just throw out there on a slightly different track is about partnerships. And I know we're really encouraging partnerships and for friends groups to, find other folks in their local community and sort of leverage an additional capacity with them. As a person who has done nonprofit program management for 20 years, funding for programming does not come along very often, just for programming. So the reason I say that is if you reach out to some folks in your community that you might have interest in working with and partnering with, that's a good starting point, is to say, there's an opportunity to get program funding. Do you have an idea? Where is there an overlap? And would you be interested in putting forward an application together? I think the beauty of this program and what Robin and John have created over the years is we've really tried to reduce a lot of barriers. There's not a lot of mess. There's not a lot of fuss. There's not a lot of unnecessary application or reporting requirements. It really is meant to just get money where it needs to go to do the work that friends groups are trying to get done and to champion. So I'll leave it at that. And I'm happy to talk with anyone about how you might want to frame that opening conversation, because it could be awkward, but you're coming to the table with an opportunity for money. So it's always a good way to start a conversation.
I will throw in one more plug because we are a little early, which is great, and I don't see any more questions. But on that note of funding for friends groups, we are currently conducting a survey of friends. If you haven't heard from me, our Friends by the Number survey. This helps getting information from friends groups about your programming, about your organization in general. Helps us to create this report, then we can then share during advocacy season to help report on all the wonderful work that you guys are doing throughout the year and throughout all the years. And so we do this regularly. So really getting that data from you is helpful in supporting you. So if you have yet to fill out that survey, I would love it if you would do that. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well. And I'm sure in our follow-up email, I will put it as a little footnote in case you haven't done that yet. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sheena, and thank you, Will. And yeah, I see, it looks like we've answered everything we need to answer. So if you do have any questions, feel free you can email me at grants@ptny.org. Feel free to give me a call too. I love speaking to you all about potential projects. And I've told some of you in the past, I'm very honest when it comes to looking at your project through the eyes of a reviewer and letting you know what will and what will not work. Yeah, feel free. I'm happy to have those discussions. And like I said, yeah, I will go through these questions a little more thoroughly, speak with our team a little bit more, especially about the partnerships, because yeah, as we had said, could be some gray areas in there that we'll be happy to address. And so keep your eyes open for your email. I'll have a link to this recording and some other good info. So yeah, from here, encourage you to go and start talking to your park managers, possibly regional directors, about your ideas, and yep, come back to us with any questions. And yeah, we hope to see your applications in the system there starting in September. So yeah, with that said, have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll hopefully see you on the webinars coming up in October and November. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moved everyone else.
I'm like,
Stop this recording.
so.